Okay. Don't want to get too far ahead and do that, right? If I mute you, nothing personal. Just want to cut down on background noise, crosstalk, things like that. Um, what I want to do quickly, I've told you a little bit about me. Um, Maybe since we have such a large group, 73 people. Wow, this is amazing. 74 now. Let's use the chat. Why are you here? What's your name? Where are you from? I want to learn a little bit about you before we get started. Welcome, everybody. This is terrific. And while you do that, hey, Alice, let's hear from Alice first. Go ahead.
Hi.
Morning. Good to
Good
see you.
morning. Good to see you. Good to be in the meetings and good to be learning more and more every day. I am on vacation for a month, and so
Cool.
I've been volunteering. Well, I will be volunteering more at CCAR in Willimantic, and I had an email that told me about this webinar, and I lost it.
Oh,
So,
no.
hey, John. So John put me on to come here again. So I've started my day off slowly. Instead of running, I've done a few chores, and that's the self-care for me. I am on vacation, but I have a schedule that's probably um, bigger than when I'm working 4 hours a day
Sure.
and stuff. But because of program, because of doing self-care and hearing about self-care, it was like, and I didn't even know the topic was self-care today. I just knew there was a
That's
webinar.
it.
That would help me in whatever way it needs to. So I am here and I am glad to be becoming a recovery coach. Thank you.
Glad to hear, Allison. It's great to see you as always. Thank you for finding us. I
Thank
know it's
you.
easy to get lost in the weeds with all the emails we get nowadays. So glad to have you here. Glad to have everyone here. Like I said, this is just terrific to see everyone signing in from everywhere. That's what I love about this online model is meeting people from all over the world, right? So, a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. Yes, this title is Self Care for Recovery Coaches. We're going to talk a little bit about compassion fatigue and burnout. What does it look like? Some signs and symptoms. I also want to find out from you what it looks like for you. Just like recovery, these things are different for all of us, right? We'll talk about ways to combat compassion fatigue and burnout, some barriers to self care. A lot of times we want to care for ourselves, but life can get in the way. Things can get in the way, right? And then if we have time, we'll get into some scenarios. We have a large group, so we'll see. I don't claim to be the authority on this subject or the expert on self care. Like I told you, I am a facilitator. This is what I do every day at CCAR. So just like you, I am here to learn from everyone in this room. So I really hope that if you're able today to share your story, your knowledge, your strength, your experience, your hope, please do. That would be wonderful. So any questions before we get started? All right, cool. So here's a look at the learning objectives, and these are for all of our webinars.
Hello? Sorry.
Francisco, good morning.
No, my name's not Francisco.
What's your name?
My name's Christopher Howell. Sorry.
No problem.
I talked with Danny yesterday and I'm my name's Christopher Howell. Sorry I'm late. I
It's okay.
went through Carlos. I had to get my name registered and everything yesterday, so
Sure thing.
uh, finally got in, I guess. So
Roger that, Christopher. Hey, thanks for being here, man. I appreciate you.
I'm still learning computer stuff
That's
also.
all right. Maybe you'll be an expert by the end of the day. We'll see. We're all here to learn, man.
Thank you very much.
You're
I
very
appreciate it.
welcome. You're very welcome. All right. So, taking a look at the learning objectives, these are for all of our webinar series. Define and increase fluency in the language of recovery, build capacity to understand, support, and advocate for recovery, learn about specific skill sets to support recovery, and create a community to advance the recognition, acceptance, and support of recovery. That sound good to everybody? Now's the time to jump if you got to go, if this isn't what you're here for. All right. Cool. So let's get started. So, what is compassion fatigue? Since we have so many people here, I'm going to ask for a volunteer to read this slide for the group. Please and thank you. Who's going to be brave? Nikki with the fast hands. Thank you.
I like reading, so.
Thank you. Cool. Good to know.
Hi, everybody. Yep. What is compassion fatigue? A state experienced by those helping people or animals in distress. It is an extreme state of tension and preoccupation with the suffering of those being helped to the degree that it can create a secondary traumatic stress for the helper. Dr. Charles Figley. In this field, one may not have had the particular traumatic experience of another. Still, in listening to the graphic details, they can absorb the stress of the event secondhand. Symptoms are parallel to post-traumatic stress syndrome, although maybe not as severe. Secondary traumatic stress.
Thank you, Nikki. I appreciate you reading. So I think an important piece here, instead of just reading some words on a slide, is to ask you all, what does compassion fatigue look like to you, or what can it look like for a recovery coach? Take some hands. Talk to us. Let's learn together. Looks like Rachel's first, and then I'll go to Brian. Go ahead, Rachel. Thank you.
Yes. So compassion fatigue really is exhausting yourself to your limit and where your own personal care needs, even taking a shower, even small errands, not paying a bill on time.
Right.
Those things aren't normal, traditional for us. They're out of routine. And that's kind of where we are first indicators of stepping back and recognizing that we need to maybe not work as much or maybe cut some sessions down. Maybe even talk to get some counseling for ourselves, maybe write in a journal, but some form that is our red flag, our internal red flag.
Yeah, right. So what I'm hearing is it's important that we're able to recognize our own red flags, right? So then we know it's time to dive into whatever self-care that works best for us, right? Brian is next. Thank you, Rachel.
Good morning. My name is Brian Scarborough. I'm from Petoskey, Michigan. I manage 2 recovery homes here. And compassion fatigue to me means, I see a lot of relapse and I see a lot of, hard work that the guys put in go to waste. And many, many nights I've gone to bed crying, having to remove them from the premises. Compassion fatigue to me means an extreme emotional distress, and it takes a physical toll on you as well. That's kind of what it does to me. I don't know what it does to everyone else, but it is very emotional for me.
Oh, I imagine. And I hear all kinds of things working in this field. I was talking to one of our center managers recently, and he said to me, I'm working with a recovery. It was a Friday. He said, I don't know if he's going to be alive on Monday when I come in. And that's a lot. And for me, I spend most of my time in trainings, right? So I don't see a whole lot of that. So I said to him, how do you begin to deal with that? And he said, it's just another recovery. This happens all the time. And that's hard for me to wrap around my head around personally, right? And we'll talk a little bit about how we do that shortly, but I'm hoping we can get a couple more hands on this. What does compassion fatigue look like to you? Let's paint a picture. You guys think you were getting off easy today before the holidays? Nikki's back. Go ahead. Thanks, Nikki.
Yeah, I actually have been, I think, experiencing a little bit of this. Mine comes out in frustration and statements in my head that start with, why can't they just blank? And when that lack of compassion has just started to leave like that, it tends to be when I become emotionally connected to the person. So for me, it happens with somebody who I've been working with longer. When I'm fresh with somebody, I'm a little bit better, but so the irritability, when I was reading through some of the symptoms and I'm like, I'm just honoring that I'm having that irritability sometimes now. So
Thank you, Nikki. And I appreciate that. And it looks a little bit different for everyone. For me, I get the I don't cares, very apathetic. And the whole reason I got into this field was because I care so much. So that's a huge red flag for me, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I got a bunch of hands. It appears I got my point across here. So Brian is next. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
I pretty much echo what everybody else said, but it's more so that sometimes you feel more about others than you do for yourself. You got to remember self-care is important. If I'm not taking care of me, I'm not going to do half the job that I could do to help somebody else.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Mm,
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Uh, P is next, and then Ed.
Yeah, thanks, Travis.
Welcome.
Yeah, I was just going to expand on what Nikki shared and then you shared as well. For me, it's in my mind. I start to not care. The kind of the visual I often share is like the eyes in my head are rolling back, when I listen to someone's, you
Right.
know, um, story sometimes because similar to what Nikki says, like, okay, come on, we've heard this story before, you've been here before, and that's when I know that, hey, I need to take a break, I need to take some time because, as you said, Travis, we're here because we care, and so anyway, thanks for letting me share. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Pete. And that's right. We're approaching 100 people that care so much about this topic. All right. That's just amazing. Thank you for sharing. Ed is next. Then I'll take the next two hands and we're going to move to the next piece. Go ahead, Ed. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Travis, thank you. When I think of compassion fatigue, I often have to be careful that I'm not thinking of comparison fatigue, because so often I have to understand that we have 100 participants here, and I think there could be 100 different forms of compassion fatigue,
Right.
because so many, even my compassion fatigue is impacted by my age, where I am emotionally, physically, and I can be fine one week, the following week, I can be totally in another place. Uh, my challenge for me is, hey, so and so is doing it. Why can't I do it? And I
Right.
often push myself, or I take it too easy because I'm constantly comparing myself to others. The only person I need to compare myself is to myself at the present day or how I was yesterday.
Thank you, Ed. That was terrific feedback here, right? So some considerations here about comparison fatigue. That's my first time hearing that. Love it. Okay, I'm going to take Rachel next. Thank you.
Piggybacking, I've got 4 quick points, which I think everyone
Please.
can definitely share their own definite compassion fatigue. But I think overall, too, clinically speaking, I mean, we all have our red flags, our own recognitions, but I think that as a trainer, it's really important to understand that compassion fatigue also starts too with the clients and the loads. So a big flag is that you actually start losing empathy. It's not empathy for yourself or for your own situations, but you actually kind of come in and you really start to say, you know what, I I'm I'm hitting a wall. This person doesn't want to be here, these things, so you lose empathy. And then when you're not there, you're constantly trying to figure out how you can be better. Now you can serve them. And at the same time that you're doing something so purposeful, you're actually depurposing your own self-care too. So
Yes.
that's another big sign too, is when you're really thinking of that person. It's normal to think outside of the box. It's normal to think about the people outside of your sessions, but anything more than like 15, 20 minutes in a whole week or between is a big sign too. And at that point, you're really not able to meet that client where you're at. And again, you start into the self comparing yourself, your purpose, why are you doing this? And then your clients also can see that too, because you guys are really good at reading rooms.
Yeah.
So I think that's on a clinical level too, that the compassion fatigue also can come and be expressed from on a clinical level as well too. So I want to make sure that people understand too that if you see any of these red flags, that's really important to reiterate and sit down also with someone to discuss, because sometimes you might be a great fit with that person, but sometimes it's a little much. So I also think that's really important for people to take care of. I see that a lot with folks.
Thank you, Rachel. Everyone get that. I have no notes, but I want to reiterate, right? It comes from the helping relationship, just like it says here on the slide. It's experienced by those helping people or animals in distress, right? It comes from that empathy that we have, right? Thank you, Rachel. Got a couple more hands, JVP, then Angie, and then Eric, then I got to move on. Just looks like you're on mute, my friend. No problem. I just sent you a little request to help you out.
There we go. Hi, my name is Johnny. I'm up here in Lansing, Michigan. As a person who's not currently employed in the field, not getting paid for it, but very active in using my credentials. The one thing that I always say is I can't give you a dime if I don't have a dollar.
Right.
Meaning that when I run out, I don't have anything to give, and you can't give away what you don't have. So that's one of the things that I notice. Um, and it's been something lately for me. I work with a lot of jail ministries and bike organizations and things of that sort. And right now, this time of the year has just been horrific for a lot of people, a lot of death, a lot of ODs, a lot of this, that, and the other. um, but that's the thing that I notice when I just get to a point where I'm a codependent, so that's another thing that I have to deal with and be very careful of, because I will tend to want to give more of myself than I have to give in
Right.
order to have a positive outcome for somebody else. Because if they feel good, I feel good. So I have to be careful of that part, especially as a codependent. I think I wanted to just throw that codependency thing in there for anybody else that might be that way.
I appreciate your self-awareness here, Johnny. You know, that's what this is about, really knowing ourselves in a way so that we can help others, right? Thank you. Angie's next. You're back. Your hand was down. Now it's up. Thank you.
I'm back. Thank you. Most of us as adults are visual learners. So the analogy that I use with this in the work that I do with leaders as well as with others in peer recovery is really that everyone's wearing a cloak of care, right? The people we're talking to, we ourselves, and every time we add on someone else's cloak or coat, it just adds layers to what we're already carrying. So visually at the end of a session or the end of a day, I will visualize removing those coats of care that I've taken on from other people. And that can help me just kind of reduce some of the additional burdens and layers that I'm carrying. So using the analogy of a cloak of care has been helpful for me.
I love that, Angie. Well, it can get heavy, can't it? Thank you. We got a lot of wisdom in this room. I second that, Matthew. Said that in the chat. Appreciate you, Angie. And we'll take Eric, and then we're going to go to burnout next.
Good morning, Travis. Good
Morning.
morning, everyone. My name is Eric Monahan, peer recovery coach out of Winthrop, Massachusetts. That's East Boston, for all of you that don't know. And this is funny, you talking about this today. I was speaking to a group of civilians last night about this stuff. And what I'm finding, at least I invite you to consider this, is for me, the emotional capital gets spent not just with my recoverees, but with their families, with my family, with my personal life. It's more of a, wraparound situation where I have to have more than just boundaries. I have this much every day, and I got to decide where to put it. And so I try to go for the source of the issue with my recoveries, but also now I notice I'm doing it with family and friends and trying to separate shop talk from my personal life. And that can be frustrating and a drain emotionally, and it is very fatiguing. It's compounding stress on stress on stress. And so even after all this time of doing this, I'm still learning how to really separate church and state in this stuff in a better manner to keep myself available for all the people around me, not just recoveries and at work or coworkers. It extends everywhere, because in this world we're living in, everybody wants to emotionally vomit on you. So what is your protective shield?
Yeah. Yeah, right. And that's what we'll get into when we get into self-care. But, you bring up a great point, Eric. It's the compassion needed just for life, let alone our work in this field. It's a lot is needed there, right? So how are we managing that? How are we taking care of ourselves in a way that we're available to everyone? Maybe we're not available to everyone all the time. Maybe that's part of it as well, right? But we'll get there. We'll get there in this conversation. Thank you all for contributing. Like I said earlier, good wisdom in this room, right? So let's take a look at burnout. And we're going to do this just like we did the last one. I'm going to ask for someone to read the slide, and then we'll take some examples here. Who wants to volunteer? Mickey, that was quick. Thank you, my friend.
I'll be on it today.
Cool.
All right. Burnout is a process involving gradually increasing emotional exhaustion in workers, along with a negative attitude toward clients and reduced commitment to the profession. Common in work environments that make high demands on employees but offer limited support and rewards. Workers are not in control of how they carry out their jobs when working toward goals that do not resonate with them and when they lack social support. People experiencing burnout often do not see any hope of positive change in their situations.
Thank you, Mickey. So the key thing here, well, two key things, right, is burnout isn't just exclusive to folks in helping roles. This can happen to anybody in any role, right? And it's a process. It's something that can grow over time, right? So, Mickey, I'll ask you, you're still off mute. What are some signs, symptoms, experience you have with burnout?
I think so. For me, like, when I see it, it usually starts with frustration, feeling unappreciated. Um, you know, um, like I said, it's one of those things that I think I got to deal with that just recently actually because I had a guy here that was doing he was doing kind of like part-time peer stuff and then part-time like maintenance around here, and he was getting all bummed out because they have him doing all this extra stuff, right? But then when he asked to try to be hired on as a full-time peer, it wasn't something that they were able to do at the time, and he's just like. I don't get it. They expect me to do all this other stuff, but they're not willing to advance me over here as a peer. Like, because, I'm about ready to put my 2 weeks in somewhere else, or, put my 2 weeks in and look somewhere else. So it gets real, mentally straining on a person for sure.
Yeah, when you don't see a way out of the situation that you're in, right? There's
Right.
no reward or hope for something greater, right?
Yeah. You're on one platform and you're never getting anywhere higher than that platform.
Right, right. Thanks, Mickey.
Yes, sir.
So some other signs and symptoms. I can take a few hands on this, just like we did with compassion fatigue. And these signs and symptoms may look similar, right? I mean, there's a reason we're talking about both of these. Todd, thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Todd. I'm from the Keene Serenity Center located in Keene, New Hampshire. We have a program that is geared towards transportation as part of the services we provide, bringing people to their medical assisted treatment appointments and whatnot. And, working with somebody, I recently heard another staff member make a comment about that it's their recovery. And they don't want it, and I'm just going to move on. But we really have to reach out harder. For when that's said, I'm just reminded of the old saying about you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But you also can't exclude it from the water, and that's important.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. I think the version I've heard of that is you can lead a horse to water, you can't force him to drink, but you can get his face wet, right? You can plant that seed of hope, right? And I appreciate that. Thank you. Charlene, you had your hand up. I don't let people get away around here.
So, can you hear me?
I sure can.
I am actually experiencing compassion fatigue and burnout now.
Okay, tell me about it.
What it looks like for me is I'm normally able to catch the signs of it coming, and due to the fact of my financial status, I couldn't afford to just take the time off that I know I needed. So I thought maybe I'll just minimize the workload while at work if it's possible. But when you're in high demand, it's just not possible. So I start seeing a difference in the quality of work. Of course, we all have to write notes, right? But you ever go back 2 or 3 days later to read over a note and you be like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, sure can.
Did I misspell that? I didn't misspell my name. Now, I know my name starts with an S. I spelled it with a C. Was I really Russian? Is it that crazy? And I start to see like the difference in the quality of work. and people that I'm normally patient with. Not only do I want to say, look, get the fuck over it, I almost kind of, how do I not incriminate myself? Burnout is real.
Yeah, it is. That's why we're here.
Yeah, and when I start going through burnout, more often than not, it's a client that'll bring it to my attention. Like, hey, you was a bit short the other day. Hey, I'm not naturally grumpy, right? So a client said, listen, you look like you about to cut somebody Tuesday. Like,
Yeah.
was I wearing that? But it comes from giving so much.
Yeah.
To so many and not being able to pour back into you. Like we were someone was just saying how important it is to have self-care. But when your finances don't match up with what your self-care needs are,
Yeah.
it's just not always doable. And I'm at the point where compassion fatigue plus burnout might equal bail money. I'm trying not to go on snap. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks for sharing, Charlene. You know, you bring up a lot of great points. I mean, how many of us getting through the holidays right now with already tough financial situations, having to buy gifts and take care of our children and the people we love so everyone has a nice holiday. Financial stress can destroy people, right? If we're not taking care of ourselves, right? And I say it like that very deliberately. One, because it's happened to me, but I see it amongst people. I see it amongst recoveries and things like that. So again, it just speaks to what we're doing here. And Charlene, thank you for being so open. And for what it's worth, I can't even read my own handwriting when I'm burnt out. So I get it. I totally get what you mean. Anthony's next. Thank you. Morning.
Oh, good morning. Thank you, Travis. For me, losing some objectivity and forgetting for a moment that it's the person's plan, and instead of invoking things like motivational interviewing, I become a little bit more directive, and I have to catch myself on that. And I have a good supervisor that points that stuff out, when that does occur, and I share with that. So, uh, when I lose that objectivity, I know that something's off, and have to get back on track and, elicit the information from the person that I'm working with.
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate that. We lose our ability to see the nuance in things, right? I know for me, things become very black and white, you know. That's an issue. And it's great that you have a supervisor that can recognize these things. Every coach needs a coach, right? Every therapist needs a therapist. I'm a strong believer in that myself. Thanks, Anthony. All right, I'm going to take Laura and then I'm going to go to my next slide. Thank you. Good morning.
Oh, hi guys. I'm at like a 2-year rehab and I have been here for 7 years. So I have decided to leave this program and to go out and start a new job.
Cool.
Being here was just kind of like, I don't know, I felt like I wasn't changing anything. I wasn't getting anything out of the program anymore. I wasn't helping people. I was supposed to hold these people accountable. I mean, it was really a different place when I came in. So, I'm a peer support specialist here, and I'm going to do this for me. I am leaving here to go take what I've learned here outside. So I'm going to call it a burnout here for me and just move forward with something different.
Oh, I'm happy for you, Laura. Kudos to you for recognizing that and doing what's right for you, right? What's the analogy they give on the airplane one where you got to put the oxygen mask on the child or the person you're caring for first before you put it on yourself, right? It's the same idea. So thank you again. Thank you everyone for sharing. And I saw people taking notes, so you're gonna love this next slide. So this talks a little bit about a nice little side by side, the difference between each one, couple definitions, some signs and symptoms, also some examples for each. So I'll just read the examples because we talked about definitions and signs and symptoms. Some examples for compassion fatigue. And again, these are just examples, right? Recovery coach is feeling emotionally drained after repeatedly hearing clients' traumatic stories. Gave you my example earlier about the center manager who didn't know over and over with multiple recoveries if he was ever going to see him again, right? That's a lot. That's a heavy burden to carry. Recovery coach experiences sadness and guilt when recoveries don't improve, right? Sometimes as human beings, we're so empathetic that we start to attach ourselves to others' outcomes, right? And in turn, that hurts us. Some examples for burnout: workers overwhelmed by unrealistic deadlines, lack of recognition for their contributions. Reminds me of my time in sales. I was a salesman for 5 years. Yuck, not for me. Employees struggle with monotonous tasks and unclear role expectations. Any other examples you can think of for these before we talk about interventions for these things, solutions, self-care, things like that? I don't know the answer to that. If we can share the slides, I have to check in on that. If I can, I will share it with everyone here. Rennie, thank you. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Rennie Afamato. I work in a outpatient facility in Shelton, Connecticut. And, one great example would be anybody who worked during COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, being an essential worker working in an inpatient facility, I mean, that is total burnout right there. That is the definition for me, and something I definitely, I went through. I saw a lot of people go through, and being somebody who's really good at what they do, your whatever facility you work in is really going to want you to be there 24/7 because nobody else can fill your shoes. And that's really something that's difficult. And I'm trying to keep my ego and my pride out of that.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, when you're the person that gets the job done and is there for clients and hearing what the clients are going through and trying to work with them, and being away from your family and all this other stuff, I mean, that is definitely, for me, I was actually kind of confused about whether that was compassion fatigue or burnout. But after hearing and seeing these slides, I think it really was burnout and not compassion fatigue necessarily. So that was a great example for me that I thought I'd bring up because I hadn't heard it. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rennie. We hold ourselves to a high standard, don't we? Thanks for sharing. Pete's back. Talk to me, Pete. Thank you.
Thanks, Travis. Yeah, I agree with Rennie. After seeing this table, I was thinking that maybe my example was more burnout versus compassion fatigue. And I guess that's my question to you. So is compassion fatigue more like, gosh, where you may require, some outside help versus you just taking some time off? Because I tend to burn out, and I'm very highly aware of that, and I'll take breaks whenever I need to. But just reading the signs and symptoms of compassion fatigue, it almost seems like it's kind of beyond that. Like you need therapy now, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I think the signs and symptoms are similar and the same in a lot of ways. I think the key difference here is that the compassion fatigue comes from that helping role, right? I don't get compassion fatigue from trying to hit my sales numbers, right? I get burned out from trying to do that, absolutely. But they can overlap too, right? There's nuance to this as well. But that's the main difference as far as I can see it, right? That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Sure. Tracy, morning.
Morning. Hi, friends. Thank you so much for this great training. Taking a lot of notes, and I'm from Buffalo, New York, and I'm here recovering here at the agency that I work at here. And I noticed for myself that sometimes the compassion fatigue can also lead to the burnout. Like the burnout is like the overall ending stage of putting like the oxygen mask on other people before I put it on myself, because I need my cup to be full to where it's not even like you can't pour from an empty cup. Well, sometimes I need my cup to be full so the excess can pour into other people's cups. And I had to learn the very hard way how to it's like there are times where I had to be like, you know what? It is their choice. It is their recovery. If they're not at a space to meet and it's unfair, right? I'm putting these expectations on somebody who might not literally be ready, but I'm still there, right? Like,
yeah,
it is that analogy where like I love what one of my loved ones says, like I can drown the horse in the water and they're still not going to drink. So I have to let them know there's water here whenever you're ready. And it isn't like having a cynical attitude. It's just like, okay, how's that working out? All right. Well, we've got options when you're ready. And I
Right.
have to kind of like, I still have to be there and supportive, but I also can't throw myself into thinking that my self-worth as a peer is designated by how successful this person is in their recovery. They're as successful as they are going to be. I can't force somebody to be more willing than they're going to be in their own recovery. So that's
Yeah.
my piece.
Thank you. And that's what I was referring to earlier when I talked about, avoiding tying ourselves to others' outcomes. We're all here because we care so much, because we want to save lives, we want to change lives. I'll give you an example to sort of highlight this. I knew a coach who he had a relative that had died from an overdose, and he got a recovery that really reminded of him. I don't know if it was his personality or what he looked like. So suddenly he wanted more and more for this individual, and this individual wasn't willing to engage in the way that he had hoped for, and it burned him out. It burned the coach out. We can't. That's a great way to set ourselves up for these things we're talking about here, right? So it's all about self-awareness, recognizing our signs and symptoms, what it actually looks like for us. But great share, Tracy. I appreciate it so much. All right, so I'm going to move the slides. Thank you, everyone here. And we're going to look at some ways to sort of combat this, right? So, can I have someone read? You guys have been doing so well volunteering. I'm just leaning into it. The compassion fatigue side of this. So, you have compassion fatigue, the effective interventions, and examples. Take the first hand that goes up. Thank you, Alice. I can always count on you in training too.
Thank you. Compassion fatigue, personal strategies, regular self-care, exercise, mindfulness, therapy to process vicarious trauma, emotional boundary setting, not taking on clients' pain as your own, organizational support, trauma-informed supervision, peer support groups, reduced caseloads if possible. Examples: a recovery coach joins a peer support group to share challenges and reduce feelings of isolation. Supervisors provide debrief sessions after difficult client cases.
Thank you, Alice. So that's compassion fatigue. I'll give you all a break. I'll read the burnout side of this slide. It's my Christmas gift to you, I suppose. So burnout, personal strategies, prioritize time management, set boundaries on work hours, incorporate activities that rejuvenate energy like hobbies or vacations. Organizational support examples can be flexible scheduling, clear role expectations, creating systems for recognition and rewards, right? Employees struggle with monotonous tasks as an example. Employees struggle with monotonous tasks and unclear role expectations, and management improves team collaboration to share workload and reduce individual stress. All right, now this is the fun part. What do you do, or what does your agency do to combat compassion fatigue and or burnout? Angie, you were ready. You were ready. Talk to me.
I saw the keyword mindfulness on
Yeah.
the screen. In addition to being a peer recovery coach, I'm also a certified mindfulness teacher. So when I lead sessions or do courses, I really talk about mindful moments and practical strategies for mindfulness. Many of us have kind of the vision of having a meditation cushion and sitting for hours, which is great, but who has the luxury of time to necessarily do that, at least on a regular basis? So it's really about seeing mindfulness for the moments of driving. How can we turn off the noise and kind of listen to what's going on within instead of getting caught up in all the things, all the noise that's going on without? So that's always a recommendation, is to don't say, well, I don't have time for mindfulness, because it really isn't about the long extended sessions. That's great if you can do them, but 10 minutes here and there, or 5 minutes several times a day, has been proven to be just as effective.
That's terrific, Angie. Thank you. Thank you. Glad to have a mindfulness expert. I don't know if expert is what you use, but you're more of an expert than me. Let's just put it that way. I do what I can in my own time. Is it Lonzetta? Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes.
Great.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm Lonzetta Jackson. I'm from Atlantic County. I live in Pleasantville, New Jersey. I'm a peer recovery specialist. I work for Prevention Links. Prevention Links, one of the requirements with Prevention Links as peer recovery specialists and other positions across the board, we have to see a therapist. So in seeing that therapist, it helps us talk about the things that we experience as peer recovery specialists. Also, I'm in long-term recovery, so I still have support groups that I go to. I have a women's group that I belong to. I also make 12-step meetings and I go to church. So I try to find balance. But I heard somebody earlier talk about how compassion fatigue spills over into the family. And that happens because sometimes you don't experience compassion fatigue with your recoverees, you experience in your family because they sometimes think that you work in the field and you have this magic wand that you can just be there to help everybody. So what I learned to do, how I set my boundaries is I set myself a time where it's just for me, where I don't pick up my phone, I don't answer. I learned how to say no, right? And really mean it when I say it and understand that I'm important too. So the therapist always tells us self-care is important, and he suggests to us that we continue with a support group. So that's one thing about Prevention Links, the company that I work for.
Thanks, Lonzetta. No is a complete sentence, isn't it?
It is, whether their feelings get hurt or not, because sometimes we have to tell ourselves no.
Yeah, and I was a yes man for a long time, and with good intentions, right? But you learn over time, especially in the fields, setting those boundaries is good for everyone, not just ourselves, right? Thank you. All right, we got a bunch of hands here. Terrific. Mickey's next.
Yeah, so I think I'm pretty fortunate where I work at is we're kind of a rural area, so our demographics ain't, I mean we got a one stoplight in our town, so it's one of those real small towns. So like our work we've incorporated for the peers to where we're able to, if we're having a rough time, I mean we got a meditation room that a person is always able to escape to do some guided meditation. And then we also do, supervision, a supervision every week to where if something's going on, that's a time to be able to address it and try to get through any kind of fatigue or burnout that they might be experiencing or be able to address any kind of issues, throughout that point. So I mean, we're pretty fortunate where we're at and where we work at on the things. I mean, they really keep self-care as one of the main priorities, right? I mean, we're only as good as what we are inside, for our clients. So
Yeah. It sounds like you all have created a culture where, these things are important. It's all right to talk about those things. It doesn't happen just when an emergency occurs or someone is completely burnt out. And I think that's a worthy goal for a lot of agencies in this field. I'm very lucky to say CCAR is just like that. I'm very comfortable to go to my supervisor about any of those things. I know I have an EAP if I need to utilize it. That's an employee assistance program for those of you. Acronoc, we used to call that in the in-person trainings, right? And what that is, if you need to see a therapist or anything like that, the company will connect you to someone, right? Nikki is next. We had Mickey and then Nikki. Like
I noticed
I'm a
that
poet.
too.
I like rhymes. I can't help it.
I noticed that too. I was just like, and everybody always says to me, oh, Mickey, you're so fun. You're so fun.
Oh,
So
goodness.
humor is my go-to self-care. So that is like one of my keys. But when Lonzetta was talking about scheduling like your own like personal time, I was glad to hear, or at least that's what I heard her say, because that's probably what my sponsor, my own recovery, had told me, was to schedule yourself on your calendar. You're so good about putting everything on your calendar and filling that up with commitments and sponsees and different work and all this stuff. And she said, why don't you schedule your own time on the calendar?
Yeah.
And what that has allowed me to do when I did it was to continue the process that I have for staying with my commitments. So it was on the calendar I can't be hypocritical and then ignore the commitment to myself. And it also allows me to tell other people no more easily because, and it's teaching them, right? Like I always look at it as if it's helping them, if helping myself is helping them, then that's a good thing. So I can say, actually, no, I can. I see on my calendar that I've scheduled some self-care time and and like it allows for a really good conversation because as an example, so that makes it a little easier because I have a very hard time remembering to take care of myself. And because I just want to keep helping. So I need to be first too. So yeah, I was glad for the reminder. I'm gonna schedule some self-care time on my calendar today.
Yeah, I need it too myself. You know, I get wrapped up in the race of everything's and enrollments and trainings and all that, and I forget I need that time to, you know, just touch base with myself and focus on priorities and things like that. It's really important, and I love what you said about teaching others this healthy behavior, right? And not just our coworkers and the people around us, but what about our recoverees too, who may not know what healthy boundaries look like and what self-care looks like. You know, it's good for everybody, right? Thanks, Nikki. Ed's next. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Travis. I raised my hand, and then after I raised my hand, I'm hearing people talk about some of the things I was going to bring
That's
up.
okay.
So I'm going to be very quick. Well, the older I get, the more I understand the importance for myself personally is to do more of a preventative approach to my self-care as opposed to a reactive approach. It's too late for me many times when I'm tired, I can't function, etc., or I'm making mistakes. And I also find that if I take a little time for myself every day, it's more effective for me to be consistent as far as quantity. Because many times, if I am not consistent, the next month I am so beat down or fatigued that it takes me a long time to recoup. So my approach constantly is consistency, preventative as opposed to reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. What is that corporate phrase? Building the plane while we're flying it, right? That can get really exhausting over
Right.
time, right, Ed? So it's good to build it before you start flying it, is what
If
I'm
I'm
hearing you say.
diabetic, it's more important for me to look at it every day by measuring my insulin and my numbers as opposed to waiting next month and then having to do some major care.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same reason we go to the doctor regularly. We go to the dentist regularly because what happens if we neglect these things? It all same truths virtually across the board here. Thanks, Ed. Rennie's next. Thank you.
Hello again. Yeah, I think, looking at it from a employer standpoint, some of the things that we've put into effect here are we have clinical meetings twice a week to go over caseloads and things like that. But in the beginnings of those meetings, we make sure to do some stretching. We make sure to do a little bit of meditation, maybe for a couple of minutes or whatever, just to get ourselves focused. And that's just a part of it. And then the other piece of that would be, the supervision during and after any kind of crisis that's going on and having a debrief and really being able to talk to a supervisor or another peer in crisis. Sometimes supervisors aren't always available. They're not always here. So we also put into place a employee advocate or a champion, somebody like a recovery coach, but for staff. So this person is there for and to hear any issues that are going on with the employee, especially therapists, maybe even the receptionist is having issues. We have an irate client who comes in and is still using or something, and they don't know how to deal with it sometimes. So it's really good to have any type of support there so the employees can go to not just your supervisor, but somebody who's not going to go right to HR and say, hey, this is a problem. So yeah, it's just good to bounce ideas off of one another. Thanks.
Yeah. And I love that. It's kind of like what Ed was saying. It's very proactive. It's a culture. It's something that is cultivated throughout a team or an agency. It's not just at a company I used to work for back when I was in the corporate world, where we'd all have the worst time, worst week, worst month of our lives. And then pizza would appear in the breakout room, and then everything was magically supposed to be okay, right? But that's just an example of just being out of touch. And like when we're in human services and we're working with people and we're changing lives, it requires a lot more than just that. I mean, I think it does for them too, but I'm here for human services and recovery. We'll put it that way.
Pizza's nice too, though, isn't it?
I was never unhappy by it, but I think it's more than pizza, right? As you said. Thanks, Rennie. I appreciate you. All right, I'm going to take the 4 hands that are up and then we got to move it because believe it or not, we only got about 40 minutes left. Rachel, thank you.
Hi. On a quick note, I have a lot of credentialing, and I think that one of the things I think it's really important for people to remember, and I call it the internal design of immediate relief, is sometimes we lose hindsight. And when we start to develop into compassion fatigue and burnout, and sometimes if you're not taking care of yourself and you let yourself get past burnout, you actually develop post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can turn complex. And at that level, chemically speaking, symptoms can be treated, but it is a permanent neurological, chemical, physical, actual change. So keeping these kind of things in mind, we've all had to go through recovery processes. Some of us still struggle. It's a lifetime struggle. And when you personally sit back and you think that remember your own recovery, you don't want people judging you. And all of this, the compassion fatigue and burnout comes down to a judgment when you're overdoing yourself, because now you're questioning. You don't see the judgment, but that's another key barrier that's behind things. But when that person comes in during your recovery, you were on a journey. Your path was different. Everyone's path has been different. And those few people that were there for you on that route, they were like they're pit stops. There were flaggers. There was somebody there to help you. Your whole life is a journey. It is a story. Whether you've had any recovery issues or you've never had to deal with having those issues. But when people come to you with a problem, I mean, you're a piece of their life. You draw a straight line, doesn't matter what side you're on, left or right, but that person, think about them walking in a forest. They're stopping, they're exhausted, they're having a breakdown, they're weak for some nature, whether it be a family problem, maybe a financial issue, whatever reason, does not matter. They are struggling. They are stopping. They're AKA coming in to see you for that session, right? They don't want you to be judged. You didn't want to be judged either. You just wanted someone to listen, just to be heard. And that is one of the most important things in helping anyone recover. And even if you didn't have a recovery issue, whatever problem you have, even if it's just a simple emotional issue, you're stopping and you're just releasing. That person is releasing the stuff they just went through.
Yep.
It's our job to help them kind of see the light a little bit, but once you help them see the light and you help them explore and do that probing, if you do a little bit more than that, you're passing judgment, because at that point, you're really telling that person, you really kind of need to sway this direction. You don't want that. So again, bringing it back to that example of the path forward, you are a piece that's helping. So if you understand that, you can help, and the compassion fatigue and burnout doesn't hit quite as hard. You remind yourself immediately, hey, I am one person. This person just wants me to listen. I can be here to listen. I can, make suggestions. We can talk about it, but that's all that's needed and required from you. That person doesn't want much more than that from you. They're there for support. They want to feel supported whether they're right or wrong in their actions. We don't know all of the reasoning that they may have made, the choices they made to, talk about what they're talking about that day, but understand that you also help them flow and be there one more day. And if they broke their sobriety, you're there the next day, you are still that pit stop. They know you are there, and they develop that trust, and they keep continuing on. They get it. They understand you've been there. You guys are there and connected. But at the same time, never, never do that judgment. Never forget that they're here for you just to listen and be supportive. And when you realize that limit, it's a lot easier to compartmentalize after your shift is over, and it helps cut down. You did everything you could that day. You did. You got to believe that. And if people make choices that aren't ideal or wrong, again, that's that judgment, that hidden judgment. Stop. You're there to support. We all make mistakes in life in general. Just be there, be that supporting guide. And that is really one of the biggest things that helps. And when we come home and we're showing compassion fatigue, those burnout symptoms, we unfortunately do that to the ones in our lives because we're angry and we can't talk about it because we got to keep things to a degree private. You can't say what this person did today made me really upset and it's bothering me. You can say, I'm just really bothered by work today. There's a lot I just didn't know how to deal with. I'm just kind of still thinking about it a little bit. My brain will fish it out later. But, so there's a big fine line. And when you act out to your family or friends and your loved ones and you're snippy, it's because you want to tell them so bad and you can't. It's like you're hurting and you're tapping at a window. So keep that in mind too. And if you do have a blow up in an incident that creates a problem for you at home or in your friends' lives or such, understand, just say, hey, I'm really sorry. Sometimes work gets out of the way and I'm just really bothered. And I just thank you for I'm sorry, I mean to snap, just was bothering me in the back. And it's okay. So you can salvage your relations at home because that's why we do it. We know we can hurt the ones that we're not going out intentionally to hurt, but slips out and the person in the other room doesn't know what's happening. What did I just do? And they don't understand. So again, keeping in mind that you did your job, you were there, you helped point that person, and you cannot make choices for them. You can lay it all out and they can lay it all out what they want and they don't do it the next day or later on after they leave the session. It's not on you.
Yeah.
Your job is only to be there as they need you. So I think sometimes too, when you keep those attitudes in the forefront, it's been very successful for most of those Serpas and the CARCs that I've worked with and seen. So, and I do a lot of training and licensing, and I really think that's really, really, really important for people to understand.
Thank you,
And thank you
Rachel.
for that long, long rampage. I'm sorry for that.
It was not you might think it was a rampage. I didn't see it as a rampage or hear it that way. I appreciate your passion and, it's something for me that has helped me. Your idea has helped me compartmentalize. And the way I look at it, right, is, we see people going through all different kinds of things coming from all different walks of life. And as a coach, I don't even need to fully understand. I don't need to fully agree with their choices or their things they're doing. What my number one thing I am there to do for this individual is believe that they're having a human experience. And so many of these individuals have never had that before. And it is massively powerful. And in doing that, I'm better able to care for myself and allow for my own process. And, we're all different. We all see this a little bit differently, and that's okay. But like you, Rachel, I think that is an important invitation to the group, right? Thank you. All right, Matt, and then I'm going to the next.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
I've been thinking about when it comes to self-care, reconnecting with nature is huge for me. It's humbling, and if I'm experiencing burnout or fatigue, it's a good thing to it's time to take a hike, literally. And I'm actually, I'm volunteering coaching right now, and I'm taking my recovery on hikes, and it's been enjoyable. He's really digging it, and we're getting some good sessions done out in the middle of the woods.
I love it. I love a good hike myself. Whenever someone says take a hike, I'm like, sure, where are we going, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, man. That's terrific, man. That's terrific. So I'm going to move it forward a little bit here. So here are just some ways that we can combat these symptoms. And these are just some examples. Use regular evaluation tools to assess your level of compassion fatigue. Agree with a friend or colleague to help your awareness. Some folks talked about that, having those other people in the room, whether it's a supervisor or a fellow coach, to help you see these things, right? Seek regular supervision and ask for what you need. I know for me, for the longest time, like I thought that asking for help meant I failed, right? Like that was, again, my own stuff. Of course, as coaches, we have to discover and manage that. But most of the time when it comes for asking for help, no matter what it is, it's the best thing I can do for myself, right? Get outside, right, Matt? Help work with any personal trauma you've experienced. Outside help. Sorry, I read that wrong. But yes, get outside. Take a step back if you're experiencing severe symptoms. Some other things here, take something off your plate, Maybe your supervisor can help with that. Increase mindfulness. We talked a little bit about that. Add regular movement, schedule time alone. That came up. Set those boundaries. No is a complete sentence, right? Assess trauma inputs. That can be news, social media, complainers. Me, myself, some of my story. I took a 2-month break from social media, and it worked wonders for my mental health and just my overall being in general. That itself you can get burned out from, right? Attend workshops, something like this is awesome. Start a new hobby. I think that was supposed to be the next bullet point. Make transition rituals and ask for help. We talked a little bit about that. What else? What do you do specifically to care for yourself? Matt goes on hikes and he takes his recoveries on hikes. Stephanie, thank you. Yep, you got it.
I had to unmute myself.
It's okay.
So honestly, this has been great. The slides that you've been sharing and then different things that I've been hearing that people are talking about, setting time for yourself. And I do something similar to what Matt does. Going outside, I love to purposely ground. So, taking off socks and shoes and then sticking your feet in the grass and, soaking up some vitamin D from the sun, but trying to get connected to nature. Talking to a supervisor about it. Doing yoga. It's another thing that I like to do because it's mind and body. But I think music as well. So whatever our input is, and I'm glad that you brought up social media too, because I take social media breaks regularly when I notice that I'm just irregular. But I will be more mindful of what my input is. So am I listening to music that is, on a low vibration, or are they talking about things that aren't going to be feeding my soul? Am I watching something that is, off-putting or negative versus something that is more uplifting? The rom-coms are a classic go-to.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, but I try to be aware of what the input is so that way it's not affecting my output. And I kind of just take an assessment there. Oh my gosh, somebody put motorcycle ride. Yes, that's a lot of fun. Not for me, but I know people that were like, yeah, we need to.
Thanks, Stephanie. And I love what you said, kind of taking an inventory. Like, what am I consuming that is not conducive for my own self-care, right? Like, I knew for me, like when the election and everything was going on and all the vitriol that was on social media, I was like, I got to get out of here. Like, I can't, it's not serving me at all. And I'm not making an opinion one way or another here. I just want to be clear on that.
Yeah.
It's for everybody. It could be the music you're listening to. It could be the shows that you're watching. It could be what you're seeing on social media, recognizing what isn't working, just like we would with our own recovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.
All right, we got a bunch of hands. I'm going to take the hands that are up, and then I want at least one more thing we got to get through before we go. So Jim is next.
Good
You didn't have to
morning,
put your hand down, Lori. Hang on one second, Jim. Lori, you didn't have to put your hand down. Sorry to interrupt you, man.
You're good.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's
Morning.
Jim. I am a recovery coach in Lowell, Massachusetts, and training to be a CPS. For me, avoiding some of the burnout and compassion fatigue, I need routine to my day. I need my day to go well, and I need it to be meaningful. And I think, I'm so sorry, I forgot the last person's name already, but she had mentioned something to the effect of filling your cup. I got to do that. I got to have things throughout my day that are fulfilling and meaning something to me and doing something for me. Even if it's just playing a video game for 2 hours, I'm still getting something out of that. And making sure that my day is going the way I need it to, and I am getting something out of what I'm doing is vital to me. And that's what I pass this on a lot in my work.
Yeah, right. I mean, we ask our recoveries, what do you need to do today for your recovery? Or how can I help you with your recovery today? we can do it for ourselves. You know, it's a question we got to ask ourselves every day. What can I do for myself so I can be there for others? Right. Thanks, Jim. And I love playing video games too. 2 hours on the low end of how long I can go personally, but Mickey, thank you.
All right, so, well, I think one of my biggest things of the way to fighting compassion fatigue is like, I do a lot of self-reflection. I'm in active recovery, so being able to just even go home at the end of every day and being able to see what I've accumulated, not just materialistically, but as far as with my family, being able to see how happy everybody is, because there was plenty of days coming home where there was not a happy soul in the house because of my actions of what I was doing, right? So to me, that's my biggest thing, is just being able to do that self-reflection and being able to see where I'm at now compared to where I was, and understanding that every dark day has a bright day right after it,
Yeah. Thank you, Mickey. That's a great perspective. Thanks for sharing. Pete is next. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks again, Travis.
Of course.
Yeah, such great input. I know one of the ways that I practice self-care is I take time every morning to spend time in quiet reflection, meditation, and prayer. So that's something that I do every day. But something new that I've been trying is sound healing. So, I'm a person that self-talks a lot, listens to podcasts, vlogs, and just takes in a bunch of information. Part of my job is talking to people all day, every day. So sometimes I just need no words. Silence is always really good. When some people mention talking about going out for a walk or even for a motorcycle ride, just not having any music playing sometimes is really good. But sound healing, I've found, has been helpful for me recently. And then I think the last thing I'd like to add is just that I liked what someone shared about developing a preventative approach to self-care, being consistent and intentional. I think that's super important, because then someone else also added that even 5 minutes of like quiet meditation or breathing helps, even if that's just 5 minutes per day. It's a beginning. So anyway, thanks again for leading this.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Pete. And we can't underestimate the power of intention. That's what I'm hearing from what you were saying. So thank you for sharing. I have Todd and then Jesse, and we're gonna move on. Go ahead, Todd. Thank you.
Thank you again. Here at work, we have yoga and meditation and the crafting on Fridays. Personally, here at work, I think it was Nikki that talked about scheduling her time. I was told to schedule my lunch break, because I'll work through my lunch break trying to help somebody.
Yep, me too.
And so I have on my calendar, my lunch break is scheduled, so I don't do that. Do I follow my schedule all the time? Honestly, no, but it's to remind me at least to take a lunch break. And then outside of here, I'm involved with a 12-step fellowship that I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I attend a men's intensive 12-step weekend at a meditation center in Vermont, Green Mountain Meditation Center. And I was told that what my 12-step fellowship gave me, I can't let that keep me away from my 12-step fellowship.
Right.
So I still am active in the fellowship. Thank you.
Oh, I love that. We're sitting here talking about all the little things that we all do every day, but we can't forget about our recovery pathways too, right? That's a huge portion for so many of us. Thanks, Todd. I'm going to take Jesse, and then I'm going to get Rachel too. Don't worry, Rachel, I got you.
Thanks, Travis. Something that really changed the way I rest was I had that Calm app. I was really getting into meditation, and they had awesome, like, kind of short story masterclass things. Dr. Alex Pang, The Power of Rest, was a game changer for me. He does research. He's a professor on rest, and he was talking about how it's great to take these step backs. I was a big, like, I need a day to just veg out, play video games or whatever. But he said he found the greatest like rest that we can take is if we re-engage our minds into something else. And the more it's engaged, the better. So like if you're rock climbing, you can't think about anything else other than the next rock. You know, artists, you know, you get into that flow state. He talks a lot about the flow state. Anything that can kind of connect your mind into, it's almost like I heard somebody say like active meditation. There's passive meditation where you're kind of sitting still, and then active like drumming or like motorcycle riding where there's an activity that really, you know, there's a singular focus, or almost a hyper focus on the thing you're doing. And since I started doing that, you know, I'm a drummer, so I try to drum as not just practice, but to really relax. And I heard other people talk about motorcycle riding. I love doing that too. But anything that can really engage my mind. So even when I play video games, I try to do the very narrative driven, you know, like a Witcher kind of
Yeah.
something that
Heck
you
yeah.
so much, there's so much focus and energy. I can get kind of tired playing it because you're thinking about so many things. So yeah, I appreciate everybody sharing. And Dr. Alex Pang, The Power of Rest, you know, he's got videos all over YouTube if anybody wants to check that out. Thanks.
Thanks, Jesse. And if you can grab a link on that and put it in the chat for us, for folks to copy, that would be terrific. And I love what you said. You know, me, I have ADHD. I've always struggled with like the passive meditation, just like sitting there. I'm a guitar player, so I can ease my mind and be that very present flow state moment by doing that, and that really fills my cup. So I'm so glad that you shared that. I feel very seen right now from that. So thank you. I'm sure others do too. All right, Rachel, thank you.
One thing that we really haven't mentioned either in this session either is when we develop the start of compassion fatigue and burnout, and we start taking that path of questioning and our own abilities and becomes too much, I think it's really incredibly important for everybody to recognize your sessions make a freaking darn difference. They think about you when they're not there, even if it's for a hot second. Don't think they don't come into situations where something is echoing in their head that you have said. And no matter how terrible that session goes, it is a reflection of the inner person inside bursting out. Think about you bursting out at your family at home, right?
Yeah.
Not intentional. They know you love them. You know that no matter how terrible you treat them, it's okay. They're going to still love you and support you. They're going to understand you, right? The same thing with your clients. So never forget, whether you see it or not, your support is beyond incredibly valuable. And if you keep that in mind, I think that it would really help uplift the feeling of that you're questioning yourself and can I really help this person? And you know, if someone's bringing a hot topic in that you haven't even come up with in a while, or that was maybe even a hidden part of your own past that you maybe are recognizing but never dealt with, and that comes up, it's okay. Bury yourself in it. Familiarize yourself with it. Overcome your own little fear so it's not so taboo, so that maybe that person comes in with that next crazy topic or a situation that may be coming up that you can clearly see happening, but that person doesn't. Be prepared and literally know that you make a freaking difference. You do. And you are there and you are supporting them when they need you the most, whether they show it to you or not. Even if they don't recognize it at the time, when I'm having outbursts, I don't recognize people that I'm hurting. And sometimes after I get done being angry and I'm kind of really thinking about, well, I didn't get all my stuff out. Now I'm really pissed off, right? I wanted to say this, I wanted to say that. You know, so we all have that kind of inner turmoil. But again, if you remind yourself, hey, I'm one person, I did my job. And again, you're not paid to bring your personal work into life. You are literally being paid to help somebody. You're being paid to walk somebody through their journey and just say, hey, I can understand that. I got you. We'll get through it together. Right? So you make a difference. You guys are freaking amazing. Never forget that. Don't let a bad session or a person's attitude change that for you. And when you keep that in mind and that little bit of compartmentalization, whew, it is going to be a beautiful thing for you. And it is. And I'm so proud of everyone and all their wonderful techniques. I've been reading and reading, and it's hard to read and listen because there's so many wonderful things you guys have to say. But just know you're amazing and always be proud of you and yourself. Even if it went bad, you be proud. You stood there when nobody else was going to stand there for them, right? That takes balls. And you did it. Never forget that, all right? Good luck,
Thanks,
everybody.
Rachel. Thank you. Yeah, this has been terrific. We have 100 people in this room. You know, I've learned so much with you all here today. So, real quick, we got 15 minutes, and I think this will be a fun way for us to wrap up. You know, wouldn't be training with CCAR if we didn't take a look at a little scenario here. And we'll take a look here. I'll read this to you, and I'm just curious on your thoughts. So we're gonna do a little coaching, if I could sum that all up, I guess. So Maria is a recovery coach who's been working with clients or recoveries for 5 years. Recently, she noticed a change in herself. She feels emotionally drained after sessions. She started avoiding calls from recoveries who frequently share traumatic stories. She feels guilty for not being strong enough to handle their struggles. She's also having trouble sleeping and experiences frequent headaches. So, a couple questions for the group, and we'll answer these together for the next, we only got 14 minutes. What signs in Maria's behavior suggest she might be experiencing compassion fatigue? And if you support Maria, you're her coach. What would you suggest or what questions would you ask? Take a second to think about it. Now, who was our first coach of the afternoon in this scenario? I'm real comfortable with silence, my friends. Eric, thank you. And then I'm going to go to Rachel.
I mean, just something that like I can identify with is avoiding calls
Yeah.
because that's like my first red flag whenever I'm feeling like any sort of like mental fatigue or like early signs of depression because I'm a chatter. I can talk to a wall, but like the minute not answering my phone because I like get that overwhelmed feeling of fear, then I know it's leading to somewhere else.
Okay. So what would you suggest or ask Maria, Eric, as her coach?
As her coach, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe like, hey, do you want some help taking, maybe we can split up the calls or maybe we can, split your caseload a little bit.
Okay.
And maybe, I could help her out with that.
Okay. So identifying, what support may be needed, what does help look like? What supports do you need? I would lean into some open-ended questions there instead of the yes or no, try to gain some more information as her coach, right? I got 3 more hands. Rachel's next. 4 more hands. Go ahead.
Their symptoms are all very clear. They're in all 4 of them.
Right.
But I would maybe, even if she was feeling a little drained, I'd even ask her maybe offer an alternative method. So sometimes it's difficult to talk about extremely difficult or shameful, embarrassing things. So sometimes that person's feeling drained. You guys might be in the hot zone of things. So maybe taking some heat off, not having that visual pressure. Sometimes, it's easier to tell somebody something that you don't feel comfortable if you're texting because you don't got to see their face. You don't have to be there when they react, right? So sometimes an alternative method might be something that is good for them, kind of like the hike with that gentleman. Again, just offering something different. But again, offer them to do it by email, offer to do it by a video chat. Hey, those things could work like that too, for that. And you guys kind of already covered some of the other stuff, but that was the only thing that was different that I could share at the very moment. So I'm gonna stop there.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, we're just practicing. I appreciate that. All right, so I'm going to take the 4 remaining hands that are up, and then we're going to wrap it up. So Stephanie is next. Thank you.
The things that really stood out to me is that it's affecting her workflow where she's not taking phone calls, and it's also affecting her sleep. And when they say that it's, getting to that point, that's when somebody should get help. So I would talk about additional supports. I love the idea that Rachel had of, going about the workflow differently, virtual versus in person. I was thinking along the lines of talking to the person about what kind of supports they need. Do you think that do you have a therapist to talk about this kind of stuff with? Could you use some more training or, different resources that are in the area, or other people that can connect to the same type of, getting connected to another recovery coach, talking about what they do, how they handle it. And then also going outside of work and seeing what their home life is like and seeing if that's transferring over, because we were all just talking about, because we're in a very compassionate field, it can be very draining. And if you don't know how to, set those boundaries in place, givers will usually continue to give. So I think that, checking about what's going on with the home life and seeing if there's any supports that could, that Maria could benefit from over there, if it's parenting or a relationship or finances, and then just putting more supports into place.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. A lot of great things. And then someone had also said in the chat, what's new or different in your life? By asking these open-ended questions, we'll probably be surprised by some of the answers we get. But nonetheless, it's going to help us paint a picture of where we go next, right? So thank you. All right, John is next. Hey, John.
Hey guys, how's everybody going? All right, so those first couple of things, right? I think the majority of us probably have those questions on a daily basis at times, but I think know well enough to not stay in that mindset. And the simple fact that she's kind of dwelling upon these things after having 5 years of experience in the field definitely shows that there's something on the outside that's getting in the way. So he needs to be asked what's going on with her, because it seems like these are things that have been a constant. It's been her workload. It's what she's used to do. And so why are these things that were never an issue now? What else is going on? Is it too much work? Not enough downtime? Something that specifically affected you with one of your clients? I think a lot of the question in this is why we have our own therapist and why us recovery. This sounds like one of those examples, like when hanging out with one of your peers and you kind of say to them, you know what, you need a meeting because there's something that you got to get off your chest, or there's something that you need to spill out on the floor and get off your chest.
Yeah, thank you, John. And I kept hearing why from you. I think why is such a powerful question in recovery coaching. Children ask why all the time. I don't know if it's society beats it out of us or really what it is, but it helps us paint that picture again. And I just want to say before I take the last three hands, there's some amazing questions coming through in the chat. Ed, I love this one. If she had the power to change anything in her life, what would she change? That's terrific. Thank you. Okay, Lanzetta's next, then Keith and Jesse, and we're going to wrap this thing up. Go ahead, Lanzetta. Thank you.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me put my hand down because I'll forget. Lower my hand. Hi,
Okay.
everybody. The first thing I would ask was, did she have any PTO or sick time? Maybe she might need to go on a vacation. Because sometimes we just continue to work, and don't take that available PTO time or that sick time. Like sometimes when I feel like I'm overwhelmed, I'll take a sick day. That's my mental health day, because we still have to make sure we check in for ourselves also. And she looks like she don't work for 5 years. She looks like she needs a vacation. She looks like I would be like, girl, you need to take some PTO time. So that's what I would suggest to her, like take you some time off, because maybe in this scenario, reading in between the lines, maybe she's just a workaholic and she hasn't taken any of her PTO time. Because I have somebody in my life, I'll say it, my husband, he has a whole bunch of PTO time, and I have to tell him, listen, you have to take PTO. Because sometimes we just work until we forget about ourselves, not just in our work life and our personal life. Sometimes you have to take some days. So that would be my suggestion to her. If she has PTO, take some time off and get to know herself.
Yeah, thanks, Lanzetta. Hey, Maria, what are some things we can do? Some things we can utilize to get you in a better place? PTO is probably one of those things, right? Thank you. Okay, Keith and then Jesse, we got 5 minutes between the two of you. I expect you'll share.
I'm going
Thank
to
you.
take 17 minutes now to lower my hand. Thanks for having this today. I got here late, but I'm getting what I need, I think. And
thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for putting this on. So my thinking on this echoes a bit of what someone else said. I would ask Maria what supports she has in place. And not necessarily give her examples like, do you have a therapist? Do you have a support group? Let her have those bubble up in her consciousness so that she knows what those are, because she may not remember or realize, and I certainly could prod her along a bit. But to ask her what supports she has in place, and then a secondary question, maybe more important, is, are you using those supports? And if not, why not? So I think that would hopefully get her thinking about what she's got in her life that she can turn to. I would probably ask, what are 3 things you can do today, from the smallest to the largest, that represent self-care? Whether it's eat when you're hungry, sleep when you're tired, pee when you got to do that.
Right.
What are the small things you can do to practice self-care, because she may not be doing those. And lastly, I have to remind myself when I am in those moments of something heavy came my way, that this is not mine to carry. I don't need to carry somebody else's pain, someone else's experience, someone else's trauma. I've got enough of my own. So I would ask if she's asking herself, what is yours to carry and what isn't, and let her find her way, much as a client would. So that's what I'm thinking. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Keith. And again, it's allowing that individual to express what supports they know they have, right? It's their journey. It's not up to us to direct them to things. They get to decide. It's just like we do with our recoveries with this model. It's totally up with them. We're just walking alongside them, right? Great stuff, Keith. Appreciate you. All right, Jesse, all yours.
I think everybody hit all the great, motivational interviewing questions. Something I just wanted to encourage everybody to do, because I discovered this in my own life when I was in college and trying to get into this field, is to do an energy budget. Same way that we do a financial budget, we have, income coming in and we have deficits going out, and if we're in debt in real life, it's a bad thing. And if we're in energy debt, it's also a bad thing. And so if we write out, it's very simple. What are the things in my life that give me energy, and how much, if we put it on a rating scale of 1 to 5, and how many things are in my life within a week's time, right? Because sometimes you might have front loaded all of your energy deficit things, and then by the time, you're drained when you're doing your work or you're at home with your family. And then just kind of see, do you have a surplus of things that fill you? Or are you in a deficit of things that are draining you? And can you rearrange some things? Can you put something that fills you up in the beginning of the week or within the middle of the week, and see if that can kind of fill your tank partway through? I think it's wise that we're aware of the things in our life, the relationships that we have. We might not be able to avoid some of those relationships that can be draining, but they don't have to feel as draining if we're full. And then just like finances, there's things that it requires energy in order to get something out of it, right? It takes money to make money. There's things where when I volunteer, when I'm doing it from a great place and energy surplus, I get so much back. But if I'm doing it like, gosh, man, like this is the last thing I feel like doing. I can't believe I signed up for this freaking thing, in a deficit, now I'm not getting something out of it. So being mindful of the things that do take energy to get something out too. So those are 3 things: deficit, energy surplus, and something that takes energy to make energy. I'd encourage everybody to do that. And I'd probably do the same thing with Marie, just to see where she's at.
I love it, Jesse. And that's a great creative way to develop discrepancy, to get an individual to look at, what's working, what's not working, but how and why, right? Great feedback. Great. All right, it's 11:30. This was terrific. I appreciate you all so much. I'm hoping I can do another one of these sometime soon. But I learned so much from you all. Thank you so much for being here. Please enjoy your holidays. If you have any questions or you want to talk to me about anything at all, I can hang for about 10, 12 minutes after. I know a few of you already want to chat with me, so I'll ask you to do that. But it is 11:30, so please go enjoy your holiday. I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.